Good morning, everyone. It's November 7th, 2017, 9 o'clock, and we will call our Board of Supervisors of St. Croix County to order. And at this time, we have an invocation, and we don't have any minister today, so we'll just stand and have a moment of silence, please. Would you join me at this time in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll have roll call. Cindy? Okay, everybody's present. This time we're open for public comment, and I have some public comment here, so I will start on those. And I hope I get the first one right. Linda Helling. Okay.
Hello, my name is Linda Hendricks. Do you want my address?
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you before we get started that everybody on public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and we will time that. So, and then, yes, go ahead.
My name is Linda Hendricks. My address is 1418 144th Street in Richmond, Wisconsin. I am here speaking both as a member of Wisconsin United to Amend and as an American citizen. To me, the most deeply troubling aspect of huge money in politics is the effect on environmental legislation. Big corporate money is making changes to our laws which have the potential to create environmental disasters. A recent poll found that 99% of Americans do not want mining and drilling in our national parks, yet we have no voice, no representation. The American people do not want the dissolution of the EPA, to be out of the Paris Climate Agreement, for car emissions to not be reduced to safer levels, to go back to coal energy, no money going into wind and solar power technology, deregulations for businesses which have the potential to pollute, gold and copper mining near Bristol Bay, the world's largest area of salmon production. And here in Wisconsin, sulfide mining in the north is looking like a go. At the very least, we want clean air, clean water, and a healthy world for our children, yet we have no voice because of big money in our government right now. Sure, in time changes can be made back with regards to political legislation, but once environmental damage occurs, it cannot be undone. We need to do our part to get big money out of politics. Thank you. And I appreciate being able to speak today.
Thank you. Our next one is a Kay Brooks.
Hello. I'm from New Richmond, 1634 Royal Lane, and I am part of the United to Amend group. I have a lot of concerns, but virtually all of them are affected by big money in politics, starting with elections. Rather than just any individual being able to run for office, only those with lots of money of their own or who are backed by wealthy individuals, corporations, or super PACs stand a chance of winning elections. Those wealthy donors buy candidates' professional ads and huge signs, multiple signs. Besides that, we're inundated with zillions of emails asking for money. And I think you all experienced that. These aren't just for local candidates, but are for candidates anywhere in the country. I've gotten so that I almost never look at them anymore. as I don't have the kind of money I would need to support all that I care about anyway. Once elected, elected officials end up being indebted to their benefactors. They don't represent their constituents, but rather represent their donors' interests, which generally are to gain more money or more power. Not only that, but once elected, elected officials also spend time that they could be working on legislation, raising more money for the next election. When we were kids, many of us were told that if we tried hard enough, we could be whatever we wanted. That included being president someday. At one time, that was a reality, even for candidates who came from poor backgrounds. That is no longer possible. I believe that we need to return to government that is representative of the people, and the only way to do that is to limit the amount of money spent on elections. That is why I support a referendum to let the people speak as to whether or not they want big money in politics. Let's limit the money and get back to a true democracy. And thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person we have is Michelle Brandon. Michael.
Hi,
Good morning.
I'm Mike Brent, legally Michelle, but born in France.
Yes.
Oh, I live in Menominee, but I've watched government a lot and have been involved in government. And one of the nice things, well, go back to Abraham Lincoln said it extremely well at the Gettysburg Address. He told us all that this was the government of the people, for the people, by the people, and that's what we all believe. But that's not what's happening. And if you look, the political parties are our representatives when we try and do public things. And the political parties found out that funding is easier from the very rich, so that's where they get their funding. And guess who runs the system? The very rich. And you and I don't have much to say about it anymore. Our best voice right now is with local government. This is really a democracy. This is where you listen to the people and you try and do what their business in a way that's respectful of their thoughts. We across Wisconsin are asking community after community to look at a referendum to say basically that corporations and unions and man-made entities are not people. We're the people. Give us a voice. Bring the government back to the people. Money is not the answer, and the Supreme Court was wrong. The only way we're going to change that is an amendment to the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lorraine Vetter.
I'm Lorraine Vetter, also from Menominee, and I have a T-shirt that I'm wearing, and the person is a real person, and it represents democracies in ball and chains. I don't know if you can see this. This courageous woman went to Washington in the spring of 2016 to help protest the problem of money in politics and how we don't have a voice anymore. There was legislation pending in 2016. One was the Udall Amendment, and that was to overturn Citizens United. The other was to end voter suppression, and the other was to strengthen ability to vote, and the fourth was public financing for small donor matching, so that the money that candidates receive would be those from the people rather than from the ultra wealthy. She ended up getting handcuffed, and this is a picture of her, a real person being handcuffed when she's doing the sit-in. And this was 427 people that day that got arrested in our national capital. And nobody heard about it because it wasn't on the mainstream media, but it was on social media. So what we want to do is have you consider that we, the people, need to have a voice, and we can't when big money controls politics. We're very grateful that you will be listening to your people. We need good local government because it doesn't look like the state or national governments are really listening to us. So I want to encourage you to allow a referendum to let the people of your county vote on that money is not speech and artificial entities are not people. So we in Dunn County did it in 2014. We're hoping that your county board will also allow the people of St. Croix County to vote on this in the spring of 2018. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next person, Wendy Davis.
Hi, thank you very much. I am very grateful also to have this voice and feel like I'm just going to be repeating kind of what's already been said. But my address, I live in New Richmond, Wisconsin. My husband and I have a private practice in physical therapy there, and I get to see so many people from so many walks of life and work with them individually. I'm very grateful. And conversations come up, and I think that so many of us are feeling so disempowered. And this is, you know, I grew up thinking this is a democracy that I live in. How proud to be able to have a collection of people from different backgrounds, different views, everybody having a voice. And that is just not happening anymore. And so I see our water, like we don't even have control over, you know, do we have clean water in some aspects of our county? And I think that putting a referendum on the ballot and allowing people to start having this discussion and finding some common ground where we can bring the democracy that we all thought we were in back. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Thomas Spaniel.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Tom Spaniel. I'm the Town Board Chairman of the Town of St. Joseph, and I would like to speak on item number 8, resolution in opposition to Assembly Bill 479 and Senate Bill 387. About a month or 2 months ago, we had a similar situation with Assembly Bill 399 and Senate Bill 309, which was actually one of the 3 topics that I had a personal discussion with the governor with on August 29th in opposition of those bills. This bill is a little different. It's a little different because there are several different pieces to it. One is displaying the flag, drainage of ponds less than 5 acres, reverse eminent domain, conditional use and merger of established and substandard lots. Because I'm in opposition to this, and I'm speaking as an individual, because this doesn't come before the town board until Thursday night. We have this almost an identical resolution that is on our agenda. And so I can't speak for the whole group right now. I'm only speaking for me personally. But this is very similar to it. And the difference is, like I mentioned, was that there's so many parts to it, some that I agree with. I agree with the part that an organization shouldn't be restricted from displaying the U.S. flag. Man, I'm a card-carrying member of the NRA. And I believe that people should be allowed to display the flag, so I'm all in favor of that portion of it. There are other portions as well that I'm in favor of, and there's some that I'm kind of wishy-washy about. But as far as the merger of substandard lots and some of the conditional use grantings and hoops that we have to jump through are really in opposition of what local government is all about. We develop comprehensive plans, as I've mentioned before, over 2.5 years. We've had public hearings. We gather input. And this portion of these 2 bills, Assembly Bill 479 and Senate Bill 387, fly right in the face of local government control, at least portions of it. And so for that, I'm recommending that you pass this resolution in opposition of these 2 bills. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next person, Deborah Monica.
Good morning, and thank you for letting me speak. My name is Deborah Monica, and I'm from North Hudson, Wisconsin, 207th Street North. And I have joined the nonpartisan group, Wisconsin United to Amend. And the reason that I have is I am tired of the amount of money that I see going towards elections when we have so many needs within our community right now. So I have been doing some searching, and it's certainly not one side, Republican or Democrat, that is part of the problem. The part of the problem is the people that are making contributions in large amounts now. Pharmaceuticals since 1998 have almost contributed $1 trillion. And just last year alone, they donated over 10 million, just Pfizer alone. The unions are problematic in that they are donating in large amounts. Oil, high, NRA, over 30 million just this 2016 election. And now we have individuals and foreign companies that are making contributions. And because super PACs donate PACs to back and forth, it is hard to track the money. Now, I, as an individual, am not allowed to use more than X amount of money in order to donate to a particular individual. But this is protected or monitored, and so we have many different countries and corporations that are giving unknown amounts, whereas I, as the individual, am not allowed to go over a certain extent. Not that I could. But in any case, I am asking that you vote to have a resolution so we can have a referendum to let the people speak. Over 90% of our population is against Citizens United. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Next person, Rita Vetter.
Thank you for letting me speak. I live at 870 Bradley Drive, Hudson, Wisconsin. Our legislature should be concerned with our interests, not big corporation and big money. They are now bought by them and doing their bidding instead of doing what's right for the people of this great nation. We need to change this way of governing. This is not a Democratic or Republican issue. It is a nonpartisan issue that affects us all. We need a constitutional amendment to change this and to govern for we the people instead of big money. And this will be a start with this resolution. Let our voices be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Susan Bosley.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here because I'm also a member of the United to Amend, and I support everything that has been said so far. My main reasons are, like others, I get hundreds of emails every week asking for money. I see all of the lobbyists that are bought and paid for by big money. I can't support all the causes that everybody wants or the people who need money. We have 2 years before every national election of nonstop television ads supporting all of these various candidates throughout the country, and then our national elections. It's no other country in the world has elections like we do. It's nothing but money now. It has nothing to do with what the people want. I think we've all worked for companies, or many of us have worked for companies. The whole focus in being an employee of a company is to make money for that company. And this just promotes the fact that companies are now considered people, and they can give unlimited amounts. The super PACs can give unlimited amounts. They have limited agendas, and this is a nonpartisan issue. I know that in 2014, a Princeton study reported that the ultra-wealthy and special interest groups have a substantial impact on U.S. government policy, while everyday citizens have little or no influence. A 2015 Bloomberg poll found that 4 in 5 Americans, 80% of Republicans and 83% of Democrats, oppose the Supreme Court's Citizens United versus the FEC decision. In 2016 election cycle, outside spending in federal elections reached $1.4 billion. In total, almost $7 billion was spent on 2016 federal elections. What could we do in this country with $7 billion except listen to nauseating TV ads and having nonstop lobbyists who have such limited agendas influence how our country is run? Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, John Kraft.
Good morning. Different topic. My name is John Kraft. I'm a resident of the town of Warren, 1067 80th Avenue, just on the north end of Twin Lakes. I'm here to talk about some of the issues we've got going on in the town of Warren. I've talked to many of you individually. I'm kind of representing myself as well as a group of about 28 residents, property owners around Twin Lakes who've been directly affected by long-term chronic flooding of Twin Lakes, which has reached extreme stages in the last couple of years, has completely destroyed some homes, flooded roads. Town of Warren has spent over $250,000 in the last 2 years to raise roads 5 feet to keep them above the water, causing a bunch of us residents to get together to form a nonprofit organization called Friends of Twin Lakes to research the root causes and then advocate for solutions. So what we discovered, we set out with one narrow focus, which was Twin Lakes and our local issues there in the town of Warren. And what we actually discovered, that it's a indicator of a much larger problem countywide. And it all dovetails with the great work that the groundwater quality study group has done, which is focused largely around agricultural sources of contaminants and pollution. We really have a much larger issue in St. Croix County, municipality to municipality, in dealing with municipal waste, particularly wastewater effluent. Lots of communities are using seepage cells to seep that water into the ground. In the village of Roberts and town of Warren, they have the luxury of having a couple of lakes right there that they can discharge wastewater into. So Twin Lakes is essentially the septic drain field for the village of Roberts since 1962. These lakes are not dissipating the full amount of effluent pumped in between the natural sources combined with the effluent from the treatment plants over the long haul since this has been going on for many, many years. Village of Roberts does a fantastic job with water quality, no complaints. The treatment plant, I think they've done an exemplary job, and they're operating under some of the tightest restrictions for wastewater treatment plant anywhere in the state. So as we researched the issues, we started looking around other communities. Right next door at Hammond, their plant hasn't operated right pretty much since day one. They've been out of compliance with contaminant limits that they're pumping into their seepage cells. Boardman, similar issue. Even in Hudson, their plant is at capacity, and they're in the design stages. They're thinking about looking at designing a much larger treatment plant. So the time is now to kind of band together at all levels, municipalities, county, state, and take a look at what we can do regionally for putting solutions in place to manage regional wastewater effluent, not community by community, for whom presently the issue is all to seep it into the ground. So we'll be introducing a resolution of support. I've talked to a number of you about already. Probably the next few days you'll see that coming out. And we're going to introduce that through the Community Development Committee. And I hope to get that on the agenda, and I know my time is up, so hope to get that on the agenda for November, December. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Next person, Jaclyn Nickum.
Good morning, I'm Jaclyn Nickum. I live in River Falls, Wisconsin, St. Croix County. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning. My comment is regarding the resolution to allow United to Amend referendum question on the April 2018 ballot for St. Croix County voters, which is number 5 in the business section of today's agenda. But I want to put that in opposition to the request to approve a 7.1% increase in the county budget. I am disturbed that this question is even being brought up. The Supreme Court determined that corporations are equal to individuals when it comes to election contributions. I've distributed a copy of an article that lists actual election contributions, and corporations were not the heavy contributors that opponents like to say that they are. Do you seriously think that this resolution will change a Supreme Court ruling? On the other hand, we as citizens of the county should be paying serious attention to the hefty increases in spending. I have not had a 7% increase in my income this year. Have you? Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Jane Hansen.
Thank you for letting me speak this morning. I'm getting over laryngitis, so please excuse me. I believe that the voters of St. Croix County should have the opportunity to democratically express themselves on this matter of United to Amend. We understand that the county board has that potential to ask for the opinions of all their constituents, and a no vote on this would say that you really don't want to hear from your constituents. A yes vote to allow a referendum says, yes, I'm interested in representing the people who voted me into this position. The issue doesn't matter. It's the fact that we want you to allow the people to speak. The issue itself is very important. The article that the lady up in front of me distributed is from an author who's trying to sell a book, by the way. So business as usual, that is business and money and politics. The fact that we have national, state, Democratic, Republican, Independent, it's all money and politics. If you can't afford to buy yourself a position or get money to have somebody buy you into your position, you're out of the race. Your voice cannot be heard. So the citizens of St. Croix County, I think, deserve to be heard on the matter. If you look at the map that was included in your packet, it's not a partisan issue. There are cities and municipalities all across the state, all across the nation. Actually, 19 states have passed this resolution. Our state has not. Hopefully this referendum question would turn out positive, and that would be our way to speak to our elected representatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Kris Marshall.
Good morning. My name is Kris Marshall. I'm the owner of Apostle Septic at 1483 24th Street in Holton. My concern that I come forward with today is the direct conflict of interest that you could potentially be appointing Jessica Lee to the St. Croix County Board. I've directly had issues with her husband and her through a lawsuit, which I won through the county with a jury. I don't feel that she would be a great person to represent my community. I feel it would be a direct conflict with my business and with myself. They've spent their last 3 years of their life directly affecting me and my family, and I would like to have that taken into consideration when you're voting today.
At this time, we're still open for public comment. If anybody wants to speak to anything on or off the agenda. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Not seeing any. We'll move forward with our agenda. Thank you, everyone. We have our consent agenda, the minutes of our previous meeting, October 3rd, 2017. And we have our next meeting will be December 5th. And the rezoning ordinance, the compensation zoning ordinance, Chapter 17, Section 28, T29N, R16W, Town of Baldwin. Need a motion to, Tom, Supervisor Coulter's motion, second. Supervisor Babbitt. Any discussion? Not seeing any discussion. Did you get this? Not seeing any discussion. We have a motion and a second. We'll vote on that. And that's all yeses. Thank you. Presentations, recognition. Turn this over to.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thompson.
Members of the board, over the past year, the staff has been working on one of the board's initiatives this year, and that was to look at how the county as an organization can improve communications and how we communicate and relate to the community of St. Croix County. So the staff has been working hard, led by John Allegro, the director of IT, and some of his staff people, Annette Massey. We also had a project committee implementation team working on this. Jessica McCune, Tammy Whitmer, Scott Knutson, Dawn Jacobson, and Annette Massey. And then we had an overall steering committee, John Allegro, Ken Witt, Ellen Denzer, Colleen Lindner, and Annette Massey. And what they have been working on is a redesign of the county's website. A lot of you probably over the past week have been on your computers looking at the county's website, and John and Annette will step up to the podium, and they're going to kind of introduce us and walk us through briefly the new design of our website. And so John and Annette, welcome.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. Good morning. As an initiative to develop an effective external communication plan, Information Technology was asked and tasked with leading the website redesign team to facilitate the process. Early 2017, we secured a partnership with Civic Plus, a company based out of Manhattan, Kansas. Civic Plus has more than 20 years of experience focused exclusively on local government. Beginning in May of 2017, Civic Plus was on site to kick off our project and met with 11 smaller departments and divisions, consulting with them on their current content and vision for the new site. They returned in July of 2017 and met with an additional 18 departments and divisions. In the meantime, our redesign team identified 10 measurable goals to identify success in our project. Items we focused on included making our site search-centric, building a design which enables content to respond to any device, developing a mobile app for citizens on the go, including pictures of life in St. Croix County in all 4 seasons, intuitive navigation that brings together departments and services, enabling direct input from our citizens on what matters most to them, eliminating obsolete and outdated content, standardizing font color and size, ensuring ADA compliancy standards are met, and the opportunity to shorten our web address. Our redesign team met many, many times over the course of 6 months, determining site layout, navigation, colors, fonts, and overall appearance. Our team focused on nitty-gritty details, including which angle to display the search magnifying glass handle, the location and size of the search box you find prominent on all pages, the percentage of opacity on the scrolling content, selecting site imagery procured from our photographer depicting life in all 4 corners of our county, and the mega button and social media icons that would connect visually to our citizens. In September, Civic Plus and their team began migrating our content. They moved 366 pages of information, including 120 linked pages. They returned in October to train nearly 60 content managers that will continue to update their departments and divisions' content to the needs of our citizens. On October 26th, we launched our site softly, mostly to internal staff to monitor the performance and to begin a base for site traffic analytics. On November 1, we officially launched our site, and we are pleased to inform you that all 10 of our goals were met, and we are proud to announce the successful launch of www.sccwi.gov. In an effort to notify our citizens, cardboard rockets, including our URL, have been placed in the lobbies at the Services Center and Government Center. Our social media teams have posted announcements on all 10 of our groups. Promotional items depicting the new website address were given to all departments that service the public to hand out gratis. And in addition, Rivertowns published a full story on the redesign effort in last week's paper and online. Watch for a flyer insert to be included in the upcoming newspaper delivery for next week. Our last launch of the website was in October of 2010. And 7 years later, we bring you our efforts of the past 6 months. Watch for a refreshed design to the site in the next 3 to 4 years. The website team has dissolved, and we pass along a website standards and guidelines governance document to our branding team. We feel confident they will continue what we started to bring you and the citizens of St. Croix County open, wide communication. Thank you.
Any questions? Anybody have any questions?
Who was the photographer? Very professionally done. Yep. Thank you.
Supervisor Schoberg.
When I opened up the directory, I was expecting that there'd be maybe a link to each of us county supervisors, and I didn't find that. So it linked to the chair and the vice chair, but not so easily to the rest of us. So is that something that's there and I missed it, or what's going on?
I'm not sure that that's there, but thank you for that feedback, and it certainly can be added. When the contractor met with us and we reviewed content, there were some departments who were very specific about listing certain individuals in their department and not others, but certainly links can be made for your contact information for each and every one of you.
I had a question regarding when you open up government and then it lists different aspects and services and so forth of St. Croix County government. I felt that perhaps because the county board is the representation for the entire county, that we should be listed first, and that was a concern that I had. I don't want to lose the fact that we are a public entity and that we are elected to represent citizens around the county.
Yes, certainly, we could make that first. Thank you.
Any other questions? Not seeing any, we'll move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next thing on our agenda is the appointments, County Board Supervisor District 2. And we have 4 candidates that have come forward for us. So at this time, we will start with one. I'll just go down the list here. The first one can step forward is Jessica Lee. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me back. Jessica Lee, 1461 24th Street in Holton, Wisconsin. I won't go through my entire speech as I did last time, but a few brief introductions. Personally, I've been a resident of St. Croix County for 20 years. I've chosen to raise my family here. I've got 2 boys in high school. I am a fiscal conservative. I've worked very hard. I am a self-made individual. Professionally, I do look forward to celebrating my 25th service anniversary coming up this year with Wells Fargo. I've recently been awarded the Senior Vice President title. I lead the Operations Incident Management team, so my scope of responsibility includes oversight of about 78 different business processes. It's about 250, a little over 250 locations, about 12,000 team members to manage any workflow interruptions that may cause impact to our customers. So no small job. But professionally, I also run a really tight ship. One of the things I may have failed to mention last time is that I do run roughly a $2 million budget. I have kept that budget within 2% every single year until this year. Just over 2.5% was the goal. But overall, I run a really tight ship both at work and at home. Community-wise, I've been engaged. Most of my engagement has been around my kids. So they're in high school. We're doing college visits. They're getting ready to leave. So definitely looking forward to adding my skills and value to something new and different, which is why I'm here today. But community-wise, I've done everything from teach youth soccer to I also helped stand up about 3 years ago the VEX robotics, kind of newer to our area. One of the local schools was unable to stand that up, and it would have caused our entire western region for kids unable to participate and be able to get to state. So I stepped in and helped the robotics coach, ran the entire tournament, all of the software, hardware to make that happen, and I've stayed engaged and trained folks over the last 3 years. And then also worked on Habitat for Humanity and other local activities. I don't have as much government experience as some of my peers in the room, so definitely have hard skills. Some of my specialties in my job today are driving for efficiency and accountability. That's one thing you'll get with me. Relationship management is really important to me as well. And then always balancing in my business the need for the customer needs along with the risk and exposure. So just to address really briefly the negative campaign here today, after greater than 15 years of non-compliance with county ordinance, Mr. Marshall was held accountable via a St. Croix County lawsuit. My husband may have been involved in filing some of the complaints or supporting some of the complaints, so I guess I'm guilty by association. But just wanted to address what that was all about. If you're interested, I have some handouts in regards to what that case was about. But otherwise, I just wanted to thank you for your time and consideration today. I think I have some hard skills that I could add to this position. So any questions for me?
Any questions? Let's see. Thank you, Jessica.
All right, thank you.
The next candidate, Kris Marshall, please stand up.
Good morning. Again, my name is Kris Marshall, and I thank you for the opportunity to talk to you for a few minutes and share a little bit about my background. I moved to the town of St. Joe 20 years ago with my partner, Jeff Nockbar. We built a home on a south-facing slope and love living in the beautiful St. Croix Valley. We enjoy the area and spend a lot of time walking our 2 golden retrievers along our town roads and at the Homestead County and Willow River State Parks. Professionally, for the past 15 years, I've been working in the nonprofit sector. I currently manage contracts as a funder of community-led projects for the Center for Prevention at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Minnesota. Prior to that, I worked at Clearway, Minnesota, managing grants, and I also worked at the University of Minnesota in the School of Public Health as a community organizer on research grants. Before entering the nonprofit sector, I spent 15 years resolving personal and commercial insurance claims in eastern Minnesota and western Wisconsin. So my background is somewhat diverse. It's always been important to me to volunteer and be engaged in the neighborhoods and communities where I live. As a resident of St. Joe, I've been a poll worker for about 10 years and have served on the Plan Commission for approximately the last 12 years. I've also participated in our Park and Recreation Committee, and because bicycling is a passion of mine. Participating and serving on the Plan Commission has been interesting and actually very motivating to me, so that's why I continued. Some of the work I've been involved in includes the development of the 2 town comprehensive plans, one in 2006 and again recently in 2016. These plans guide the future of our town, making sure we are prepared for the growth as a result of the future bridge. I also facilitated a subcommittee to develop our non-residential design guidelines. In every discussion, my goal is to improve our town, plan for the future, and keep an eye on the impact our decisions have for all our residents. Protecting our natural resources, including ground and surface water, balancing this with economic growth and residential and commercial development has been a key concern of mine. When I heard about this District 2 position with your St. Croix County Board of Supervisors, I thought it would be a great opportunity to again get involved in my local community. I found that a strong partnership between the town and the county is critical for our sound decision making. I understand I have a steep learning curve on the many issues you review, and will have to get up to speed and educate myself on these. I believe my experience on our Plan Commission and my personal motivation and concern for these issues will make me well suited for this role, and I welcome the opportunity to serve if selected. Thank you.
Any questions for Kris? No questions? Thank you, Kris.
Thanks.
Our next candidate is Jerry Kolscher.
Chair Larsen and the County Board of Supervisors, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you again today. As you know, I am interested in serving on the St. Croix County Board, District 2, and you may already know some of my experience and qualifications, so I will be brief. I am a resident of the town of Somerset for 31 years now. I have served as the town clerk treasurer for the past 20 years. Every day I have interactions with our residents and our business owners, or our prospective residents and business owners looking to relocate to the town. I promote the town and I try to help the public. On a weekly basis, I have interaction with county staff. I have a good understanding of the county's ordinances, departments, and processes. I feel this is a firm foundation on which to build. I have also been a member of the Town of Somerset Parks, Rec, and Plan Commission for almost 4 years now. I was involved in the update of the town's comprehensive land use plan. I worked with local residents and surveyors, county staff every day on subdivision questions, zoning, conditional use permits, and various issues. I was able to use my experience in working on updating the comprehensive land use plan. I have also served as the Wisconsin Towns Association St. Croix County Unit Treasurer for the last 6.5 years. I attend all of those meetings and I feel that they're very educational. I'm very interested in local government. I can tell you something that I didn't mention last time I was here. I've always been interested in local government. I was born in Polk County, Wisconsin. My dad spent his entire career working at the government center in Balsam Lake. My mother was a village clerk treasurer for 35 years, and even now in her retirement, she serves as an elected official on a village board in Polk County. So my entire life, I was brought up in caring about local government, and one of my jobs every day after elementary school was to walk up to my mom's office and take down the American flag and bring it in, because it was an unlit flag. So it has been a part of my life from a very young age. So my family and I really enjoy living in St. Croix County. We love the beauty of it. We're a very active family. We enjoy all the parks, lakes, rivers. My husband, my 4 kids, and 2 of their spouses really enjoy the area. We go to all of the events that we can in St. Croix County. I feel very fortunate to live here. I'm very proud of the county. I care very much about this area, and I know if given the opportunity, I could do a good job. Thank you.
Any questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Jerry.
Yep.
Our last candidate is Scott Nordstrand.
morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the county board. I'm surprised to be here, I must confess, after the process that we've gone through, but I'm glad to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself and let you consider me for this position. I live in the town of Somerset. I've lived there 5 years. I spent about 20 years. I don't know if you've got it, I guess you've got it up there, some of my background. I lived about 20 years in Alaska and did various things. I'm a lawyer, and so I practiced law there for 15 years, and then went on to practice law for the governor of Alaska as the Deputy Attorney General, then the Acting Attorney General of Alaska, and ultimately Commissioner of Administration, which is like Secretary of Administration here in Wisconsin. It's basically where you send everything no other department wants to handle, like DMV and finance and accounting and buildings and all of that. In any case, but to back up a little, I grew up in Hudson. I went to Hudson High School, graduated in 1976, went to UW River Falls, got a degree in political science and history, and you know what you can do with that. Pretty much nothing, so you go to law school. I went to the University of Wisconsin, or University of North Dakota Law School. One thing I should say, just to give a context to my experience in St. Croix County, is during my college years going to River Falls, I drove school bus for the Hudson School Bus Company and Dick Fye. I don't know if folks here know Dick Fye, but I drove bus with Mr. Steve Takash back there. He was one of the bus drivers going to school when I did at the same time. So that's, during law school, I had a chance to do an internship with the U.S. Senator in Washington. That gave me another perspective, I think. As I said, in Alaska, I basically took a job out of law school on a lark as a law clerk and went to Alaska for the summer. And they kept offering me a job, and so I stayed there. And I had, you know, Alaska's a place where you can move fast. And so I actually got a call. I got interviewed for the job of Deputy Attorney General, which was the number 2 job working for the Attorney General of Alaska. That job involved, and this, I want to get to the sense of the breadth of what I think my experience is, but more important than that is my ability to learn on the job, which I think is important for everything that you do here every day. There were 140 lawyers working in the civil division of the Department of Law. I showed up on the first day, and they all knew more than me. Absolutely. And if you wanted to know if they did, you could just ask them, and they tell you they all knew more than me. And I remember sitting in that little office in Anchorage that morning and thinking, oh my God, what have I done? I want to go back to my private practice. But over time, I learned. You know, I learned what the oil and gas division lawyers were doing. I learned what the child support lawyers were doing. And I didn't practice in any of those areas, but I learned. And so I think the best skill for any public official is the ability to listen, to learn, and to act in accordance with what we do learn in the best interests of the constituents. In this case, it would be District 2. And I think, you know, the best testimony about the quality of District 2 in St. Croix County is look at the candidates. 4 great candidates for this position. There were 5, I guess, but we've heard 4 today. And I think that's a great testament. And you know, any of the candidates would be a good choice, I think. So I wanted to say, you know, in terms of being a quick study, I think that's important. In terms of my background, you've seen some of the things that I've been involved in. It involves a lot of things that would be beneficial to the county government, I think. Everything from retirement plans administration to fund administration to budgeting to running the public buildings for the state of Alaska to IT. One of the most interesting things I got to do was we converted the state's telephone system to VoIP technology in a time when nobody really thought for sure it worked. That was kind of risky. But so I ran the IT department for the state of Alaska during my tenure there. Now, there's another elephant in the room here, and that is I'm the chairman of the Republican Party in St. Croix County. And so this is a nonpartisan position. I understand that. But at the same time, we're all elected officials, or hope to be, and we have points of view. And those points of view are reflected in not only nonpartisan elections, but partisan elections. And that's a reality. I want you to understand that I come to this position with an openness of thought and consideration for all opinions, whatever the political view is. And that's something that I've always done, whether it was working, in campaigns when I was a kid here. I mean, I remember going door to door with a young, strapping young district attorney candidate, helping him, a guy named Rick Lundell, back in the early 80s. And, so my commitment to helping good people get into public office, whether Republican or Democrat. I mean, I think obviously I happen to have chosen one particular political path, but others are equally, the other side's equally important. So I just want you to understand that I understand this is not a partisan political position. This is a position to support the constituents of District 2, where I live in the town of Somerset, the town of St. Joe. And I would be honored to be able to do that. We are moving into a time of great change, I think. I see Ole Anderson there. I remember coming to the county board as a kid, and there he was, downtown, it was sort of an elevated position, I think, in those days. And I remember Verna Stolberg, and I remember Charlie Grant, and all those great icons of St. Croix County in the past. And then I think, look at where we are now, over those 40 years or whatever it's been, 30 years. I hope I'm not that old. Anyway, but we've got a very long way to go, I think, in the very short time in the distant future. And I just think a little new blood, a few new ideas that have come from other places, far-reaching places like Alaska, could be good for the board. And so I'd ask you to just think about that, but that's not to take away from the other great candidates that you've got here today. So with that, I'd answer any questions if you have any.
Supervisor Schoberg.
Yeah, I listened to your statements here, and you're saying that one of the best skills you could have and that you've expressed is your ability to listen to the people. Mm-hmm. And you also were forthright enough to acknowledge your position as the chair of the Republican Party here in this county. And so I'm wondering just how independent you can be. You've just listened to the viewpoint of many speakers here on the issue of the Assembly bill that's up for decision even today. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering how independent you can be, and maybe you could even express, since you've already heard from the people, whether you would be supporting of our resolution in opposition to that legislation, or because of your position, you would either have to abstain or you'd have to go against the interest of your party, because it is a Republican proposal to cut local government control by another step. Can you express your opinion on this legislation?
I don't have an opinion on the legislation because I haven't read the legislation. I mean, I'd be happy to do that and give an opinion. I can tell you that, speaking as the county chairman of the Republican Party, there are lots of Republicans that I don't agree with all the time. Come to my board meetings and you will hear from them. So I'm perfectly capable of having an opinion that differs from my party, that differs from any party, as a matter of fact. And so I think anybody who knows me, and there are a few in this room, that I am no wallflower, and I am not going to follow some party line into the abyss, because that's what Governor Walker says or what Sheila Harsdorf says. Now, do I think that there's an advantage to the county board that these are people that I work with and could be of assistance to the county a time or two, that 6 legislators that represent this county are all, good friends of mine, and I think could help us in times of need. I think that's a good thing. But if they have a point of view that I differ with, I'm going to hold that point of view. Frankly, our legislators vote differently. That group of 6 Republicans, they don't always vote together either. So I assure you that I am my own man, and anybody who's worked with me in the past will know that.
Any other questions? Supervisor Hansen.
I would just like to point out that we had a member here who had been the chairperson of another political party and served in that capacity for more than a year while serving on the board, while I was on the board, and nobody knew it, and this person never mentioned it. And I would urge the members, the sitting members of this board, to resist, and resist strongly, this politicization of the county board. It's happening during a campaign, and this is a campaign, and we should not allow the politicization of the county board, because having brought it up at all is indeed politicizing our board. And that's not a good service for our constituents.
Is it a question? Just...
Is that a question or?
If I could just respond, I
Sure.
can say that, you know, the Democratic Party St. Croix County newsletter has a story about this process right now that says that county board members support a progressive candidate who's also supported by a town board chair. It's in their own newsletter. So politicization of this process is not something I'm trying to do, for sure. But, you know, it is one of those things where if I didn't say, oh, by the way, I'm the Republican Party chairman, somebody would say, you know, the guy came and he didn't even mention that he's the chairman of the Republican Party. But if I do say it, I'm politicizing something. I don't know how I would get out of that one. But I just want you to know, I'm upfront about this, that I'm going to be fair. I'm going to do the right thing for the people of St. Croix County and the people in District 2. You know, and when I go door to door next spring and I talk to the folks there, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to bring back to this county board what they tell me they want. So thanks.
Any other questions? That's any. Thank you, Scott. Any discussion? Otherwise, I will have Cindy pass out the ballots. What? Yeah, it's a majority vote. It takes 10 members to be a vote for any one candidate. It has to get 10 votes.
And what's going to be the process if we don't have a unanimous ballot?
Excuse me?
What's the process if we do not have a unanimous ballot cast?
Well, we talked about that, didn't we, Scott? If we don't have a unanimous ballot, do we drop the lower numbers out and move forward, or how do you want to do it?
Well, there are no rules about that.
Yeah.
So I think you cross that bridge when it comes. I think what the vice chair meant was what happens if we don't have a majority after the first round. I suppose one option by the board is to drop the lowest candidate and then keep voting, or otherwise, without direction from the board, keep voting until there's a majority.
Any other questions?
You need to sign and put your district number on your ballot. Thanks.
What's the question? The question is, are you required to vote? The answer is no.
A point of order. Are we limited to voting for one person?
Yes.
If we don't have a majority in the first vote, there's no rules to suspend to drop the whole matter. How do we do that?
I think you can do that by motion.
Just move to drop the vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thanks for helping, Ken.
What?
Can we take a break then when we're done with this? And then get into this? Take a break when we're done here. Have to do these two and then break before we.
So they can start pushing up on this. Insist.
Can I make, are you okay if I make the motion on this for the approval of Maureen? Since I'm chair of that.
Okay. Yep.
We'll have a first round. Your shot. You'll have.
Yeah, I knew that. You did too.
Kris Marshall,
Okay.
okay. And then two, Jerry Kester. So it's 11, 16, 17, 18. All ballots have been accounted for.
Okay.
2 for Kester, 5 for Marchand, 11 for Matter.
And I'll announce them that way, I think. And we have a first round winner, so we're okay with that. Kris Marshall got 11 votes. Scott Norstead got 5, and Jerry Koster got 2. That's the way it went, so. And Kris Marshall will come forward, and I think what we're going to do is we'll move forward. We'll go down through the administrative reports, and then we'll take a break so they can set Kris up on her computer system and that, if that's okay. Or what?
Kris is going to sign me off before she votes on
Yeah.
the next item.
They gonna take a break before we do this stuff? They're gonna do this and then the budget, and then take a break. Ready?
We're ready to move forward. So.
The next item on the agenda is the financial reports, and in your packets, members of the board, you have financial activity representing expenditures.
Pat?
Yes, sir.
Don't we have, you have an appointment for age and disability first?
Okay, thank you. We do. I'd like to recommend the appointment of Maureen Bruner of New Richmond to the Council on Aging and Disabilities Board to fill a vacancy due to the passing of Esther Wentz. Maureen will fill the category or target group of person over the age of 60, and Maureen will serve until April of 2020.
Okay. Do I have a motion
Recommend
to
the appointment of
approve that?
Maureen Bruner.
Yep. Need a motion to Supervisor Hostas, motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that we accept Administrator Thompson's recommendation and appoint Maureen Bruner to the Council on Aging and Disabilities.
Supervisor Hansen, second that. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Pardon? Is Maureen here?
No discussion?
I don't think so, no.
We will vote on that at this time.
Boy,
That's all
your
yeses.
first vote. That's good.
Thank you. Thanks, Pat.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said, financial reports are in the packet, represents expenditures and revenues through September of 2017, so 3/4 of the year, revenues and expenditures. The bottom line revenues, we have 38% remaining for revenues, and expenditures, we have 40% of total budget remaining. So that's good. It's a good place to be at this point in the year, and I expect the revenues to, by year end, we will have met the projected revenues. So I'm not concerned that we have 38% remaining to be collected, and we're sitting good in terms of overall expenditures at this point. And you also in your packets have a summary of the capital improvement plan year to date through September 30th again. The staff meets every 2 weeks, and we review the capital project list. Each department head is present to represent their department in terms of the capital projects that they're responsible for, and they report in where things are at. So things are moving along.
Any questions? The financial report? Not seeing any. Thank you, Pat.
Okay.
Move forward.
Yes. The next item on your agenda then is a summary of the 2018 County Administrator's recommended budget. And this is the same budget that we reviewed at the Committee of the Whole meeting. I'm not going to go through the whole PowerPoint again. I selected certain portions of that PowerPoint, and I'm going to zip through this as just an overall summary of the budget. I can take any questions at this point, or when we get to that point of the resolution adopting the 2018 budget later on the agenda, we can also take questions at that point. So first of all is again just a summary of the equalized value for St. Croix County. The equalized value for 2018 is up 7%. We've exceeded the $9 billion threshold for equalized value. I'll point out just one point, and it correlates to the next slide. In 2009, you started to see the equalized value take a pretty significant dip, and that was during the Great Recession. So from 2009 through 2013, we saw a drop in the equalized value. Then in 2013, it started to bump up again to the point where 2018 we're projecting slightly over $9 billion. So the next slide correlates to that. It talks about the mill rate. The 2018 mill rate, as projected in this budget, is a slight decrease of 0.09%. There again, correlates to the previous slide. If you look in 2009, the mill rate actually started to increase through 2013, and then the mill rate started to drop to the point where we're projected at 2018 of 3.702294. So it's slightly less than last year's mill rate. So if you look at those two slides together, you can see how the equalized value has a direct impact, and it even shows up on this these charts has a direct impact on the mill rate. The next slide, just a comparison, where does St. Croix County sit in terms of our per capita levy? Of the 72 counties, we are the 15th lowest of the average per capita, $341.91. A big driver in this year's budget is the debt levy increase of $1.6 million. But we even with absorbing the additional debt levy, we're still looking at a decrease in the overall tax rate. The process, again, was an 8-month process beginning last April. Budgeting has become almost a 12-month process, but we kick it off in April. Assuming we get done today, it's about an 8-month process, so it takes up a good chunk of the year. The next slide, what were some of the drivers? If we look at total revenues available, at the bottom of the slide, and these are just some of the challenges that, some of the requests, the budget requests that came in. These were just some of the challenges that we were faced with. The next couple slides detail the revenues and expenditures of the budget. Just gives you kind of a breakdown of what, why are revenues up and why are expenditures up. The next two slides will show where some of those key points are. There's a pie chart that shows kind of the breakdown of the revenues. Next slide is the expenditures by categories in the budget. And there again, expenses by category, a pie chart. And then lastly, bottom line. That's what we look at in terms of the overall county tax levy and the mill rate. And that's the entire budget summarized there. What is the impact on a median home value of $242,000? What would be the impact? Slightly less in terms of the overall tax rate. That's the county portion of the overall tax structure for a citizen. One other point I want to raise, and I will also talk about this if a question arises, is one of the items, one of the points of discussion at the committee of the whole was some of the budget requests that were denied. Most specifically, one of the new position requests that we were faced with. One of the departments had asked for 2 additional dispatchers in the dispatch center. I've had some discussions with the director of that department, Steve Takash, Terry Anderson, the supervisor of the 911 center. Over the past year, the 911 center has really never been fully staffed. Over the course of the year, we've been short over the course of the year about 5 different, at points of the year, 5 different positions were either vacant or not filled for certain reasons. We had a couple of retirements. We had couple employees with some health issues that were out, and we also had a couple of employees that came into the agency and then left the agency after a short period of time. By the first of this next year, over the course of the next month, we will be at full staff, which is very important. So we will have a full contingent, knock on wood, of dispatchers in the dispatch center of those 5 shortages that we've experienced over the past year. In addition to that, we are going to be hiring some part-time reserve dispatchers over the course of next year, beginning now actually, and into next year. So we will have part-time or reserve dispatchers to fill in at certain points of time if there are vacancies. In addition, that pool of reserves will become a hiring pool, if you will, for vacancies, permanent vacancies if they occur within the department. Right now, we have to go out and try to recruit. It's tough to recruit experienced dispatchers, so if we hire some part-time help, some reserve help, they get the experience and the training that they need. They become potential applicants for vacancies as they occur. I've also made a commitment to the department and to the county that in the 2019 budget, the first priority for the administrator's recommended budget to the board will be one additional permanent dispatcher. But I would urge the board to consider the fact that we have a plan in place going forward to staff the 911 center. We feel it will work, and we're confident that we can get through next year and into the 2019 budget. I understand the importance of dispatchers and the job that they do. They're kind of the silent partner in all this, and we honored, several months ago, we honored a dispatcher that assisted in the delivery of a child this past week. We also had a terrible incident in the dispatch center where we had to work through just the opposite in our community. And so we honored that dispatcher for the work she did in her exemplary work. We were also, I was in the dispatch center last week to acknowledge the work that this dispatcher did on just equally as important call that she handled, but not such a great outcome. So I understand the importance of it, and I pledge that we have a plan in place going forward, and I know it will work, and I pledge to this board that that will be a top priority in the 2019 budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Nelson.
Pardon me, I got a cold, but I have two questions. Well, I'm disappointed because I'm a huge advocate of it because I lived in the job. The one thing is we still have many non-mandated programs we're still putting a lot of money to. I want us to take a good look at that first. This is a core thing that we do in the county. The second thing is, before our next public protection meeting, I'd like to see a written timeline of what you just said. So we have a plan on how we're going to fill these positions. Because I want to see it to make sure that whoever's coming behind me in my position, or if I'm still there, that we know that there's a written plan of what we're going to do to correct this problem. Because for the life of me, it's pretty disappointing. But if they're going to make it work, I want to see a plan that's in writing by next public protection meeting in December.
We can do that.
Any other questions? Supervisor Brinkman.
So if we're going to hire part-time employees, where are we accounting for this money in the budget that you proposed to us? Because we didn't have it in there a month ago. Where is it now?
Yeah, the money is always there because we have money budgeted for the full-time employees. And so when you have a vacancy, you have that money that you're not using. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a pool of part-timers that are able to cycle in when necessary, when we have those vacancies. So it's the same dollar amount. We're just filling it either with full-time or part-time, but it's an expanded concept to help get over this hurdle that we have.
So wait a minute, now I'm confused. We don't have the money there to hire a full-time person, but we have the money there to hire several part-time people?
No, so if you have two vacancies, if we're allotted
But
certain
hold
number-
on a second, we're not talking about filling vacancies, we're talking about a need for an added position. How are we going to pay for these part-time positions? That's what I asked.
So we have a budget for full-timers and we have a budget for part-timers that's in the budget. If you look at the authorized FTEs, we do have positions there. So how many hours that you use part-timers is dependent upon how many full-time employees that you currently have filled and what your need is for part-timers. So we do have a part-time budget built in already. We're just going to use that more, and we're going to expand that and use some of the full-time money if there's a vacancy in the full-time positions.
Supervisor Berkey?
I just wanted to point out that I trust that our administrator has a plan working with the finance department, and I recognize that it is important to have appropriate numbers and levels of folks in the emergency services department. But I feel like we're going to be okay. And I feel better today after this discussion in more detail than I did a month ago.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not seeing any. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
And I think what we'll do at this time, if it's all right with everybody, we'll take a 10-minute break so IT can get with Kris and get her tablet up and running. And so we'll set up 10 minutes for a recess here. We're going to reconvene into open session now. If everybody's take their seats, please. At this time, we have a public hearing on the 2018 proposed budget per Wisconsin statute 65.903. And we are open for public input if anybody wants to talk about the budget for 2018. We're open for that. So if anybody wants to speak about our 2018 budget, now's the time to do that. And I will say it one more time. If anybody from the public wants to talk about our proposed budget for 2018, now's the time you can do that. And I don't see anybody jumping right up, so we will close the public hearing and move forward with our agenda. The first thing that we have on the Supervisor
Chair
Schober.
Larsen, if I could, I'd like to ask that there be a change in the agenda because I understand that the legislature might be meeting on this issue, and so I want to make sure that one of these resolutions we're considering passing will be timely heard and presented, and that is the agenda item number 8, which is the resolution in opposition to the Assembly Bill 479 and Senate Bill 387. So I'd request that we move that forward for immediate action.
Okay. Supervisor Burke.
I would concur with Supervisor Schoberg that it is imperative that we discuss that at this time and act.
Okay. And if I don't have any problem for the rest of the board members, we will move that forward and discuss that resolution in opposition to 479 and Senate Bill 387. So I have a motion on the floor to move that.
Yes, I'll make that
Supervisor
motion.
Schoberg, second by Supervisor Berkey. Discussion. If I don't see any discussion, we have a motion. Oh, Supervisor Schoberg.
Are you talking about just changing the agenda, or are you now talking about the motion itself?
The motion.
Okay. So I would like to speak to that issue.
Yes.
And the resolution, which has been also set forth by one of our local municipalities, it was the town of Somerset that acted on it, and I believe the town of St. Joseph is about to act on it. We heard from the chair who spoke on his own behalf, but now I also want to once again draw this board's attention to the continuing attempts by some of the representatives in Madison to take away more and more of our county control of our environment and our natural resources. So what this resolution does, as was addressed by one of the prior speakers here, Mr. Spaniel, it does a number of things. This bill has got like a bunch of parts, but one of the parts that myself, I'm in opposition to, is the one that would denigrate the protections offered by the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. When my wife and I decided, let's move to St. Croix County from St. Paul, the number one reason we moved here was because of the beautiful St. Croix River. And the St. Croix River needs to have its shoreland protected. And what would not have been very attractive for me is if I came over to St. Croix and it ended up looking like downtown Minneapolis. And so if we just allow development to go unchecked, then we're going to run into more and more issues, and it's not going to be the same river. So Congress acted, the state previously acted our county acted with ordinances which have been abided by years and years. And now all of a sudden, because one property owner is disgruntled, he took his case the family took their case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court even said, no dice. There's reasons for these types of ordinances. There's reasons why local government should have control of these issues. So now there's a proposed bill, these two bills, which might be heard right now, which would, again, undercut the protections of the St. Croix County and its ability to protect on behalf of the state and behalf of all citizens of our nation. This is a national Wild and Scenic Rivers Act. So we are the stewards of this. And I'd like to see this resolution not only immediately passed, but altered in such a way that following the vote, that we instruct a representative of our county to get on the phone and immediately contact our elected officials and tell them that our county board has taken action. So I urge you all to support me in opposing this this set of bills.
Supervisor Berkey.
I wanted to point out that in like manner to town of Somerset and St. Joe, the town of Troy is also proposing on Thursday night at their monthly board meeting to put forward a resolution similar to this in opposition. This is really important, and I speak from my heart with respect to what we know and love about the St. Croix area. And many of these protections have been in place since the late 60s. I also am concerned about treating certain individuals with special treatment, and that's not what we're about. So thank you for your support of the resolution.
Supervisor Coulter.
Yeah, my basic, I'm going to be opposing the passage of this resolution, and the basic reason is because I think our property rights are under assault in a lot of different ways: civil asset forfeiture, abuse of eminent domain, windmill placement, a number of other ways. And I've expressed this notion in our community development committee meetings that I'm not comfortable with as far as we stick our nose in other people's business and their private property rights. And one of the problems I have with this, and I don't know how many other people this might apply to, but I don't think the property rights should make a difference depending on whose name is on the deed. That's the crux of my opposition to passing this resolution.
Supervisor Nelson.
Can we call for the vote?
Yep. So at this time we have a motion and a second for resolution in opposition to AB 479 and SB 387. So we'll call for a vote at this time. One, two, three, 4 noes, 15 yeses, so it passes.
And then as a follow-up on just the process, Chair Larsen, this is Roy Schoberg speaking. I would ask that we take immediate action and get notification to our representatives. So could you make a directive to a staff member?
I believe that a staff member in my office can do that.
Okay.
It's an attorney, so.
Taken care of. Thank you. We'll move up to our number 2 on the resolution establishing extra step increases for employees over 15 years of service and below the market rate. Do I have a motion to take this forward? Supervisor Nelson, motion. Do I have a second? Supervisor Babbitt. Thank you. Any discussion on this?
I'll just say make a couple comments, Mr. Chairman. This resolution comes in front of you from the Administration Committee, who recently discussed a group of employees that have significant years of service with St. Croix County. When the McGrath study, the pay study, was adopted by the board and went into effect January 1 of 2016, it looked at positions and studied a position and placed it on the compensation grid based on the qualifications and requirements of the position. It did not take into account length of time or longevity or years of service with St. Croix County. So the Administration Committee looked at establishing parameters based on significant length of service with St. Croix County, and they developed the following parameters. And before I list what those are, I'll explain that there are 19 steps to a position pay grade, and step 6 of the 19 is deemed that's where the position is paid at market. In other words, it's deemed at market at step 6. So that's kind of a point where Dr. McGrath, when she implemented the study, she acknowledged in her report that given the availability of resources of the county, it would be advantageous to try to get those employees below step 6, below market, to market as quickly or as appropriate as possible. And so, but it did not take into account years of service with the county. So the Administration Committee established the following parameters. For those employees that have over 15 years of service with the county and are below market, they would be advanced one additional pay step on the grid. For those employees that have over 20 years of service with St. Croix County and are below market, they would be advanced 2 steps on the pay grid. So the HR department, using those parameters, went through and determined that there were 16 employees out of approximately 600 plus employees that fell within those parameters, 16 employees. So 16 employees have 15 years of service and are below market. Of those 16 employees, 6 have 20 plus years of service, and so 6 of those 16 would advance 2 steps. The total cost with those step advancements for those 16 employees plus the roll-up for fringe benefits is $36,329.74. The committee feels it's appropriate to acknowledge and recognize years of service with the county that are below market, what's deemed as market wage rate by Dr. McGrath. So what you have before you is a resolution that will implement those parameters for those 16 individuals. If the resolution is approved, I have contemplated how to fit this within the 2018 budget, and if this resolution is approved, the contingency fund in the 2018 budget will be reduced from $130,000 to whatever the difference is. It would be less than $36,000 to help to offset the cost for this. So if this resolution is approved, there will be no need to adjust the budget because it will be budget neutral by reducing the contingency fund.
Any questions? Supervisor Coulter.
Yeah, Pat, now refresh my memory. This market study, it involved other county governments?
Yes,
companies?
we used 12 comparables, both Wisconsin and some Minnesota comparables for a total of 12.
Strictly counties?
Yes.
Okay.
Counties.
Nothing's comparable to St. Croix County.
We're one of a kind, I agree, yes.
Any other discussion, questions? Not hearing any. We have a motion and a second on the floor on the resolution. We'll vote at this time. One no, one abstain, and the rest yeses. That passes. Thank you. Our next resolution is the resolution approving library exemptions from tax levy. Do I have a motion? Supervisor Schoberg, second to that. Supervisor Berkey, discussion? No discussion? Did we get the second? Supervisor Berkey, you need the second. Okay, no discussion, we'll vote. That's all yeses, thank you. Next resolution, adopting the 2018 budget and setting tax levy rate. I have a motion. Supervisor Nelson, second. Supervisor Berkey. Discussion. Supervisor Long.
First of all, just a couple quick comments. Pat, thank you and your department heads for all the work on this. I know it's been very challenging. It's taken a long time. But unfortunately, the bottom line is that I think our spending is a little out of control. So we've got a 7.6% increase in operating expenses this year. That's an increase in spending. And if we add that to the increase that we had last year, so we're now pushing almost 13% increase in spending, and that's over $10 million. $10 million in increasing spending in just a 2-year period. I'm very concerned about that. I don't think it's acceptable. I don't think it's sustainable. So I'm afraid that we're creating a fiscal problem that is going to be very difficult and challenging to deal with in the future. And I think it's really important for us to recognize what we're doing and what we're spending and be willing to curb our spending habits so that we don't run into problems in the future. So I unfortunately, with all due respect to Pat and all the work that's gone into this, I just can't support the budget and the spending increases.
Supervisor Yard.
Supervisor Long, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I do believe that this spending it's cumulative, and the increases that we do on each budgetary year are cumulative. At some point, when do we draw the line? However, I will remind everyone that this very body for many, many years kicked the can down the road. The expenditures that we have done this year in the transportation building, the St. Croix Health and Rehabilitation Center, the Kitty Roads Memory Care, are all assets to this county and assets to the people. And certainly it makes a strong statement about what St. Croix County is about. It used to be service is our business. I'd like to believe that that still exists. I do, however, also believe that we need to be fiscally conservative. We may be growing, but we cannot keep leveraging tax dollars onto our property owners. And we're also given another great case in Wisconsin on the dark store controversy, which is going to be coming round bigger than life. I would urge everyone on this board going forth, as we start looking at that 2019 budget and expenditures, to start looking at ways that this county can start leveraging our assets, putting cash aside, doing more cash transactions than bonding, and looking for ways to be fiscally conservative so that we can keep our growth momentum going, so that we can keep building homes and businesses. And this can become the greatest county in the state of Wisconsin, and I completely believe that.
Supervisor Nelson?
Supervisor Long, this is actually, when we come on the board in 2014, there was a lot of things that need to be taken care of. And actually by our actions from that board and the start of this board term, we've taken care of a lot of those things. In all actualities, the so-called fiscal conservative part about it is costing us more money than what we're spending, what we should have been spending. A 94-year-old transportation facility is outdated at 75 years. So you've been sitting on that money for all those years making maybe 3 or 4%. When it's costing us 6 or 8% a year in inflation to have an old building still going. I work for the Airports Commission, just went to a retiree thing, $600 million in more improvements to the airport. That's a public-private partnership that they do because I was a state employee there. They have never once in the 26 years I was there say, we can't do anything because they know to be a service corporation and a service like we are in as county employees, you know, and supervisors, because we're taking care of our customers, which is our constituents. So we're taking care of a lot of the problems. And I don't care, people will say, oh, that's just sour grapes. No, it's not. It's the truth. These facilities, which are costing us a lot of money, would cost us a lot less back then, even if we just maintained them. But to let them go to where people couldn't even work in them, it was amazing. That, to me, was one of the biggest things when I first joined the county board. And I looked at these facilities, I said, you know what? The citizens, not only the employees, deserve better for what they're paying in the tax instead of putting it all in the bank and sitting on and say, we're doing the fiscally conservative thing. Well, the thing what you're doing is being financially irresponsible because it's costing us a lot of money now, and you're seeing it right there. So, like it, dislike it, that's just the truth. And when I came on the county board, I wasn't just a one-issue guy. I was looking at the whole of the county. And boy, it was an eye-opener. And I would totally disagree with you.
Supervisor Hansen.
I guess there's a couple things that I would add to the list Supervisor Nelson have started. The 911 infrastructure was a shambles just a few years ago, and we've spent a great deal of money by necessity, not by choice. It's something we would have rather kicked down the road if we could have, but we're more responsible than that. That situation put our citizens in danger, and I'm not saying that rhetorically. I'm saying that it was critical danger. If we sent deputies and emergency personnel down to the Spring Valley area, they had to use other emergency people to radio, for them to radio other emergency people to call into dispatch. It was not a tenable situation. We spent millions of dollars to fix that, and that's just one example. Our software that our administration and other departments use is being replaced by a comprehensive software program. Now, this isn't something that you see. It's called ERP, and it costs a lot of money, but it's going to make the county, it is making the county run more efficiently, and it will, over the course of time, save millions of dollars. It had to be done because the can was kicked down the road. That's not irresponsible spending. It's not conservative to kick the can down the road. This is a good budget. We've lowered the taxes, right? We've balanced the budget. We have a great bond rating, better than Milwaukee County, huh? And we're catching up, and I believe we're pretty much caught up. We have a really thorough and comprehensive plan for our capital improvements, which is something that didn't exist 4 years ago. So not only are we having a good plan for our catching up, we're looking down the road in the future so that we don't get into these kind of binds, hopefully again. So I don't want to conservatively spend ourselves into problems again. I'd like to conservatively spend ourselves into solutions for the future. Thank you.
Supervisor Coulter.
Yeah, I have to chime in and join Bob's team on this because, and I know that Pat made the example of the median home in not having a little decrease in taxes, but the fact is we're raising taxes, and it's because our valuation went up 7%. Almost all of that is on existing homes and businesses that weren't built in the last year. Only 1.45% of our of that proportion is attributed to new construction. So we're raising taxes on somebody out there. It's very likely that most of us will find that our median home is a little bit higher priced or valued by the government at least. So let's be clear about it. We're raising taxes. Now, Social Security recipients, of which I am one, are getting a 2% raise next year. And that's like the first raise in 3 years, I guess. I noticed that our economy has been chugging along at 2% growth for the last eight or nine. We got a couple quarters now, we're topping off at 3%. We have a duty to keep our government from outgrowing our wallets. And the other thing I'm going to point out, which is something I hear quite a bit about, is how St. Croix County is growing, and that's a great excuse for spending more money. Well, in the EDC report that we got about news around the county on Monday, I think, and it's not clear to me when it was published, but it's from the Star Tribune. And Jim Foster was the Strib columnist or reporter, and it indicates, the headline is, Home Building in St. Croix County, Wisconsin, once the state's fastest growing county, continue a slow rebound. And it shows a graph of new housing starts. And it indicates that we've got a long ways to go to have as many housing starts in the county in this calendar year, 2017, as we did last year. It's not definitive that we won't, but it's not, we've got a long ways to go. So we're only at about a quarter number of housing starts as we were at our peak in like 2003. It's been a long time. And it's going to be, I think, quite a bit longer coming back still. So I'm opposing this budget. It's too much money. It's too big an increase.
Supervisor Nelson.
Well, Supervisor Coulter, what's your plan? You guys always come with, we're raising taxes, raising taxes. I'm not looking to expand anything. I was hoping just to maintain the facilities we have, as they were in such bad shape. Do you realize that if we keep pushing off that highway department, which we're not going to do because we're smarter than that, it would cost us $2 million more a year. Just to refurbish it to make it workable for our employees was almost $8 million a year. How financially smart is that? We don't do that to our own homes. We shouldn't do that to the other things that we pay taxes into. So the thing of saying we're raising taxes, well, show me a plan where if you don't raise a little bit of taxes, because God knows we have enough things on top of us that we can't do anything, everything falls apart. No businesses move in. Nobody wants to live in a dilapidated area. We don't want that. I don't want that for you. I hope you don't want that for me. But we got to make sure that we are smart about it. We're not busting the bank. If you look at some of the, like Madison, we have a house down there. When the taxes go up, they're fixing the roads finally. Holy cow. Didn't bother me because I knew that I can ride my bike on those roads, ride my motorcycle on those roads. When you say we're just raising taxes, you don't have a plan, that's being financially irresponsible.
Supervisor Coulter. I don't want people going back and forth at each other, so just kind of address the chair if you're going to talk. So I don't want other names coming up. Supervisor Coulter has the floor.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay, well, I'm going to respond, though, because...
Yeah, I understand, but it's getting out of hand. And I don't want that to happen.
I understand.
So
as far as I want to talk about something that came up by another member of this body, whose
Right.
name I won't mention.
Yep.
And earlier, and that's our unmandated operations and the getting back to our core functions. And I mentioned to that unnamed person that I'd like, during the break, that I would like to get to work and see his list, see how it matches up with mine, because I think, frankly, we've got some things that need to go. So, and in fact, I had a conversation about this earlier last week with somebody else. So.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Berkey, you had something?
The only comment that I was going to make is that we do have some discretion as we go forward with capital improvements, that each year Pat and staff will bring forward projects, and we can make some changes, some tweaks, bid out projects, follow procedures so that we can be more resourceful and be more fiscally cautious, if you will.
Any other questions or discussion?
Just a couple of comments, and then I think we'll wrap it up unless there's other questions. But yes, the 7% increase, I acknowledge that, it's front and center, but a large part of that is the increased debt service. I mean, if you look at the overall operating levy, excluding the additional debt service, it's very low component of that increase, and that is the expenditures for the St. Croix river crossing, the mitigation projects, the land purchases. Those show up as expenditures. They also show up as offsetting revenues in the budget. So that increase can be easily broken down into components that the taxpayers will understand, that those expenditures for the land acquisition on the river, those were offset with state and federal revenues. And then the other component is the increase in the debt service. That's 1.6 of the $2.1 million increase in the operating levy. It's to make the debt payments on some of the capital improvement projects that board members have spoken to in terms of not keep pushing off capital improvement projects that this board inherited. So I think the increase is defensible, and it can be easily explained what makes that up. So I don't know if there are any other questions or comments on the budget.
Supervisor Schoberg.
I heard a comment that at least one of us is receiving a cost of living increase with Social Security. Our employees are not. So we've decided that we can't afford even a cost of living increase for our employees. They get increases due to their additional years of service pursuant to our STEP plan, but that's for an additional year of service. They're all getting better at their jobs. They're more skilled. They're providing the service that we hired them to do, and we want to keep them employed by us. But one of the PowerPoints that maybe skipped our attention, which is really dramatic to me, is that we are 15th lowest taxed county in the entire state per capita. There's 72 counties. We're 15th to the lowest. That's pretty good, I think. So we're not out of line. We're well below the average. And how is that? Well, I think there's a lot, and I look at my pridefully look at the city of Hudson and all the commercial development that we have there. So when those big boxes come in, and I hope the dark story doesn't come true, but right now those big boxes are paying a large percentage of our property taxes. They aren't people. That comes up later. So the corporations aren't people, so they don't count as the per capita. So the share that they pay of our property taxes, we're always trying to attract new businesses. Well, they're here. I mean, look at the development up there. And there's new stuff coming in all the time. So I think we should take that into consideration as well, that we're not out of hand. I agree with the comments earlier that unfortunately we've had some large increases. Supervisor Long is correct about that, but so are the other supervisors in their story that we're playing catch up. We're playing catch up. When I came on this board in 2014 and I heard about the status of the radio towers, and that I was thinking, well, maybe how much is that going to cost? Well, it ends up being several $1 million. And I got angry. I said, well, this is going to make me look pretty stupid, isn't it? I have to vote yes for this, and then my colleagues can say, well, there he is, big spender. But we're just making up for what wasn't done in the past through the prior votes of this board. So I'm pleased to support this budget.
Supervisor Peterson.
I hear a lot of philosophical arguments. I guess all smoke aside, in my humble opinion, we had our chance for input at the Committee of the Whole meeting. We all gave our thoughts and views, and I think that it worked well. The Patrick and company came up with a budget. Maybe I don't agree with some areas on, but I think it's overall very satisfactory. I agree with Supervisor Ard that we have to look ahead with a conservative eye, not that some of us don't feel we have been all along. So I will support the budget, and I will be looking next year at places we can be conservative. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've had a lot of discussion on this, and we have a motion and a second on the floor. I think it's time to vote. Brent?
Administrator Thompson, I felt like a year ago we talked about that when we were doing the budgeting process this time, we'd be looking at 19 at the same time. There's that next year that we're going to start doing that, doing it 2 years at a time.
No, if you look at the budget, there is a column, I believe, for 2019 projected. Yep.
Okay. So at this time, we'll better be quick.
I'm sorry. I went Captain Nelson a little bit. Pat, is it normal, or is it that counties, can they not do 2-year budgets? So you give yourself a longer view, or is it just you got to do 1 year every year?
You have to adopt an annual budget resolution, but we have started moving towards a 2-year, at least a projected budget for 2019. If you look at the budget document, we've started that, but I believe legally we have to approve a budget resolution every year.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to vote. There's a motion and second to adopt the 2018 budget. Four noes, the rest yes. That passes. Thank you, everyone. The next resolution to allow Unite to amend referendum question on April 2018 ballot for St. Croix County voters.
I move that we adopt the resolution.
Motion by Supervisor Hansen, seconded by Supervisor Osnes. Discussion. Everybody's listened to a lot of that. Supervisor Long.
Real quick comment. As I looked through the board packet, the one thing I noticed, and what I think is really important to me, is to make sure that we're making objective decisions based on good analysis, pros and cons, so we have all the information. And the one thing I noticed in the board packet is basically the information we've been provided happens to be on one side of the issue in supporting the resolution. I didn't see any information that would give us any justification as to why the Supreme Court, decided what they did. I mean, these are pretty smart people. There had to be some justification as to why they made the decision they did, and we're not provided any of that information on the other side of the issue. So I'm not necessarily, I can't say I'm for or against this resolution, but my point I'm trying to make is we were not provided with sufficient information to make a good analysis and make a good decision, because we don't know what the justification was for that decision. So I'm really having a problem with this. I don't think it's appropriate that we vote on this at this point until we have the right information to make a good decision.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Babbitt?
Just briefly, Mr. Chairman, thank you. We certainly had impassioned discussion during the public comment period on both sides of the issue. What jumps out for me about this question, quite beyond the issue of super PACs and money in politics on that end of it, is what has happened now if you decide to run for office at the state or national level in particular, that a huge majority of your time is involved in fundraising. The amount of money that it now takes to run a campaign is astonishing to me, and political campaigns now run seemingly nonstop. So we never have a period of time, it seems, in which we are kind of recovering from one campaign period and moving on to the next one. So for me, that's one of the aspects of this issue which we didn't really discuss, at least in public comment, was the fact that especially in two-year positions, as in the House of Representatives and in for us here, in the House of Representatives, you are constantly fundraising. And that seems to me to be a lousy way to try to govern if the vast majority of your time is spent on the phone trying to raise money. I think regardless of which side you're on this question, it makes sense for us to put the question to the people of the county rather than make that call ourselves. And hopefully when and if this referendum comes to pass, people will do research and look at both sides so that they're well informed.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Schulberg?
Yeah, I've been witness to what happens when large contributions can come in and influence government. I've seen it because of my connections with the party that I'm loyal to, and I know that to get, for example, a U.S. representative seat around here, you got to have enough money to buy influence with the Twin Cities television stations. And there's big money behind one party, and there's not behind the other. And as a result, you get all these dark ads coming in, and you just feel powerless. I, like so many of the speakers here, get emails left and right, and I make contributions, but I run out of money too. We all run out of money. And so big money influences government. That's who's in office now in Washington, are people that have been bought. So what's about this new tax cut? So when you pay millions of dollars to have someone elected, you want something back. So the new tax cut, if you've read about it as proposed, hopefully it won't pass as proposed, but the new federal budget will reward the large contributions the most. So the billionaires will escape any estate tax so that the Edelmans of this world can pass their estates on intact. I remember back in 2000, and I'm an estate planning lawyer, I can make a lot more money with the changes that are being made, because now everybody has to go back and change their documents. So I should be in favor of this new tax plan. But back in 2010, I remember that was the year that George Steinbrenner decided that, well, maybe his heart was going to give out that year, and because of that, the Yankees, those damn Yankees, continue on to have dominance over my beloved Minnesota Twins and your Milwaukee Brewers. So the estate tax does have some value in putting a check on the oligarchs of this world, who otherwise are just accumulating more and more power and influence. So that you're seeing that happen right now with the tax cuts. It happens in our own communities with groups like Americans for Prosperity. There they've put in tens of thousands of dollars into the local campaigns. So I would be very supportive of this referendum so that we can put it to the voters and give back the power to the people, like we've heard from so many of the people that spoke up this morning, and I want to thank them for coming and using their democratic voice. You don't have a lot of money, but
This is where you can influence local government, and I'm sorry, but you don't have that much influence in Washington, nor do you at the state level. But you do here, and so it's nice to have you here.
Supervisor Nelson.
Well, a year ago, I ran for state assembly. You know how much I had to raise just to, to be a candidate, to be somewhat on the radar without the outside money? They want me to raise $100,000. I said, you got to be kidding. And you know what? The people who donated the most to my campaign was the ones who could least afford it. Then all of a sudden, the outside money comes in. They put the website in there, Liberal Scott Nelson, Plus, I gave you guys all a 10% pay raise. It was $7 actually a month, but that's what happens. So it ends up smearing a person. We don't make a lot of money doing county board, but it ends up putting me as a person who's just a crazy liberal who wants to do all these crazy things. And this is from people who don't even know me. So I'm like, I got to the point where I said, you know what, I would rather go knock doors and talk to people. And the one thing I learned about that, there's a lot of great people in this county and 30th Assembly District. But the other thing is there's a lot of bad people out there who want to put money in it to make sure that their ideology is the only one that's going. And that's not fair for either side. Because even if I disagree with you politically, I don't think it's right that you should have to sit on the phone for 5 hours a day and try to drum up money from people and call them. That's sickening. I think you should put levels on. In the state, you can only get $2,500 if you run for assembly, or $500 if you want to run for county board. Let's put limits on it, because then you can just concentrate and make people actually go out and knock on doors. I did a couple thousand doors, got a pretty good workout and got to meet some nice people. But I'm sure the person I ran against had a lot more business money and he could reach a lot more people. But you know what? I'm all right, because I felt like I did the thing in my heart that was right as far as how you run a campaign. So I didn't make a pile of money doing it, but I learned a big lesson that the system is really broke.
Had a motion and a second on the floor, unless somebody has a lot of discussion. Supervisor Berkey first.
I guess to me, the crux of this is that we put this question to the voters in St. Croix County. Regardless of whether you feel one way or the other, it's not about us, it's about all the individuals in the county. So I will be supporting this on that behalf.
Supervisor Coulter.
Yeah, just totally immaterial to the merits of whatever your view is on this proposal. This isn't county business. We should be focused on nuts and bolts running the county. This is not the right venue for this approach, and there's no reason for this to be on the county ballot or many other things that other people might be inspired to bring to us in the future of similar good motivation and passion and so forth, but it's just not county business.
If there's no further discussion, Supervisor Ard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may not appear to be county business, however it is. We represent districts of persons who, whether they have run for an elected office or not, may not be aware of all of the give and takes, of all of the money that comes in and goes. We can ignore this and go on as business as usual. But I don't think there is a person in the room who will not state that our political system, our system of persons running for office, whether local, county, state, or federal, is influenced by persons not of that district. This is a start. It is not the answer, but it is a start to inform our constituents that you do not have to be inundated with 10 million emails, commercials, and 1,000 different pieces of mail. I do believe in bringing the voice of the people to whatever body I am representative of, and currently that is diminishing. I will tell you from what I have seen currently on the web and on Facebook regarding St. Croix County elections, which will be happening, there are already people out there who have begun their campaigns, fundraising for a county seat, with monies coming in from outside of this county. So this is very real. This is a start. And for everyone seated at this table, it is a point of information that we can bring to our constituents and speak about this so that we keep the voice and the control of St. Croix County in St. Croix County. I will support this resolution.
Any other discussion? And we're going to call for the vote. We have a motion and a second. Three noes, one abstained, and the motion passes. Thank you. The next one is a resolution approving amendment to the Personal Policies and Procedure Handbook, updating workers' compensation section 2.20. Do I have a motion to approve? Supervisor Schoberg. Do I have a second? Supervisor Osner seconds it. Open for discussion.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple of comments. This resolution comes in front of you from the Administration Committee with their support. It is a revision to the Human Resources Personnel Manual regarding how the county administers the workers' compensation insurance. The HR director is here if you have specific questions. Basically what it does is it revises the county's policy to mirror what was the same language in the collective bargaining agreement for the law enforcement employees. The current practice, employees are paid through the workers' compensation insurance if they're out on a work-related injury. It covers 2/3 of their pay, and the employees are able to supplement the additional third of their base wage with the PTO, paid time off. The collective bargaining agreement does not require that practice, and the revision that's in front of you would mirror that same language. So if you have questions regarding this, Tara, I believe, is in the room. Human Resources Director, she could answer specific questions.
Are there any questions or any further discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second. We'll vote. All yeses, that passes. Our last one is a resolution authorizing engagement letter with the Vaughn, I can't pronounce these names, and Roper, Krager, Dickinson, LLC, together with Simon Hanley Conroy, LLC, as counsel in relation to claims against opioids manufacturers. Do I have a motion to? Supervisor Berkey, Supervisor Hansen seconds it. Discussion on this. Supervisor Nelson.
Was this brought by the Wisconsin Counties Association? Am I correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Supervisor Coulter?
Yeah, I had occasion a couple weeks ago to get together with the, I can never remember what the initials stand for, but at any rate,
Yeah.
Wisconsin has a prescription drug monitoring program that they implemented over a year ago. It became mandatory in April 1st, 2017 for all prescribers, doctors, pharmacists, nurse practitioners, anybody can subscribe certain prescriptions, including opioids. In that time, in their first year, they have seen a decrease in opioid prescriptions, 17.5 million fewer doses. They are now getting 26,000 inquiries a day, where with a mouse click, prescriber can see what the prescription history of the patient is who's looking for a prescription. So, and they have 40,000 registered users. It's already having an impact. Now, in addition to that, and I'm going to have to look to my notes here because I can't trust myself with numbers anymore. But okay, and I'm just going to read this because at least it's short. At least 3/4 of opioid pill abusers and almost all heroin addicts got hooked without ever having been prescribed pain medication for an injury or illness, according to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. Emergency room records show only a fraction, 13% of opioid overdose victims began taking drugs because of pain, according to the medical journal of American Medical Association, Internal Medicine, okay? And my real thing comes down to this. If we wanted, the customers for these opioids are going to have to pay the judgment for the litigants if they're victorious. That's where the money comes from, to pay off those judgments. Why are we cutting the lawyers into this deal? Why don't we just simply put an excise tax on all the opioid manufacturers and make the patients just pay it more honestly right there when they get their prescription and leave the lawyers out of it? I know some people, I won't mention their names, won't like that, but leave the lawyers out of it and use the money we would have otherwise handsomely paid lawyers, no doubt expensive ones, and use that for more treatment as well. So not only do we leave the lawyers out of it, we save that money and we put it into things that matter. The state's talking about building 3 new treatment centers to address this problem. That's on the drawing boards. They got some federal grants. We can use the money for that, and it's a much more sensible way to do it directly instead of this convoluted with a lawsuit. So that's my piece.
Okay. Supervisor Hansen.
My understanding is that we won't be putting a penny into this, that the costs associated with this will be borne by the firms which have initiated the lawsuit, that it's a class action lawsuit involving the municipalities that are joining into it and the counties association. So it's not going to cost us a penny. We only stand to benefit from it, and our constituents will be better protected because of it.
Supervisor Schoberg.
Yeah, speaking with one of my clients who is a medical doctor, formerly in Hudson, there was a time that Big Pharma would be coming in to meet with the doctors and tell them that this drug or that drug is not addicting, when in fact it actually was. And so some of these pharmacists, some of the doctors in the past were making prescriptions with bad information. That's one of the things this law firm is trying to track down, and all those big profits that have been earned and they would otherwise go to the shareholders of Big Pharma, those is exactly what the lawsuit would be attacking, is to get at the profits of Big Pharma. Do we need lawyers? Well, just recently there was a vote in the federal government and it went 50-50 in the Senate, and then the Vice President voted to say we should no longer allow class action lawsuits against financial institutions. So if you can't get a class action lawsuit, and let's say that Wells Fargo decided to open up 3 or 4 bogus accounts in my name, am I going to sue personally Wells Fargo for the $60 per account that it costs me? No. But some of the representatives that represent us, both one of our senators and our representative, said, we don't need the lawyers involved because it's up to the people that are harmed to bring the action. That just means that
nothing's going to happen when Wells Fargo decides to open up a few more accounts in your name without you knowing it. So yeah, we need lawyers. And in this case, the lawsuit is going to have a big effect, I think, on the opioid problem that we have, and providing resources back to our community if this lawsuit is successful in combating the opioid addiction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There seems little doubt, at least based on my experience being in healthcare for a long time, that we've generally done a lousy job of handling pain issues in this country, generally speaking. Individual physicians and hospitals like the one where I work and really all over the country are wrestling with the issue of how do we handle those individuals who actually do have chronic pain and who are suffering because of it appropriately. How do we do that in a way that doesn't hurt them, that actually helps them? And the issue that I have with pharmaceutical companies is that, I mean, obviously they're corporations. They want to make profit. They want to be able to return a decent amount to shareholders and all of that, which I understand. But they've taken full advantage of the struggle that the country's been having for a long time in how to deal with pain. And so what's happened is either we don't deal with it, in which case people needlessly suffer without appropriate medication, or we overdo it to the point where they become addicted and really struggle with the problem. Supervisor Coulter is right. There is a good monitoring system in the state of Wisconsin that's beginning to help doctors make some progress on at least tracking where people are filling prescriptions. But there's no question, at least in my mind, that pharmaceutical companies have taken full advantage of both physicians and individual patients over a long period of time. And whether or not we, I say we more generally, win some kind of a lawsuit against opioid manufacturers is not the point for me. It's rather that somebody, some group is saying, wait a minute, this isn't okay. We need to take a look at this. We need you guys to back off, work together with us to find a solution to the problem instead of focusing on pumping medication into the system. Finally, I went to the dentist about a year ago, had a small procedure, was not a big deal, but the dentist was worried about some pain that I might have after the procedure, and she gave me 20 Percocet. I didn't take a single one, but it turns out that's routine. That happens all the time. As a result of that, medicine cabinets throughout our county have little vials of these pills that have not been taken that people get a hold of. So we have to have a situation where pharmaceutical companies are working with us, not against us.
Further, Art.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The program in Wisconsin for tracking drugs is the Enhanced Drug Monitoring System, or Enhanced Drug Monitoring Program, PDMP. And this is utilized by anyone who is writing prescriptions. We still have blocks within that program. Law enforcement and hospital personnel cannot share information. And this is one of the issues. And I just sat on a roundtable regarding opioid abuse and use with a number of medical professionals and persons from the state DHS while the governor's cabinet was on tour. And I can tell you, we have a growing problem in Wisconsin, which most of you are aware of. To think of this resolution in the same lines as the tobacco industry lawsuit would be walking on the right side, because that's exactly what it is. It is not just about taking the pharmaceutical companies and holding them responsible for bad marketing tactics, for misinformation or disinformation to medical professionals, but it is also stating you cannot bring this type of substance into the American public and then not take responsibility for the marketing actions you've used to get it there. Whether or not St. Croix County receives any settlement from this is aside the point. The resolution draws attention to a growing epidemic. And although we do have the HOPE legislation in Wisconsin, which will be enhanced yet again this year, it is not enough. We need to stand and take responsibility and let Big Pharma, as well as practitioners, know that we're not going to stand for this, that we will not allow society to crumble based on a pill. This is our opportunity to do so, and the opportunity for each and every one of us to become involved.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. If I don't see any more discussion, we'll vote at this time. Thank you. Two abstain, 1 no, and it passes, so we'll move forward with that. And that concludes our resolutions. Requests for further agenda items. Anybody have anything? If you don't have it today, just get a hold of Cindy, myself, or Pat, or something like that, and we'll move them forward to the agenda. County Clerk's report.
I do have a couple things to report. Some of you have asked me about the spring election. So the notice of the spring election will be published this month. And if you're wondering what's on the ballot, it'll be the, for St. Croix County, Supreme Court Justice, Circuit Court Judge, Branch 3, and county supervisors, along with local and school races and referendum. Deadlines coming up. You cannot circulate your nomination papers till December 1st. I do have packets in my office, but all of these forms are also available on the Wisconsin Elections Commission website. I will be putting links out on the county website under the election information if you want to get to them that way. Just remember before you circulate your nomination papers to complete that top portion so your voters in your district know what office you're running for, okay? And I can help you with the forms if you need that. But the deadline then to file is January 2nd at 5 p.m. And I think that's all I have. But I do have packets for you if you have any questions about that. Is there going to be a February primary? We won't know that until January, but I'm planning on it. So. Veterans Day service is Friday here at 11 a.m. and at the Government Center. Just wanted to remind you of that. Refreshment fund, I'm still waiting for some additional people to pay the $10 on that. Wisconsin Counties Association sent me several calendars for county supervisors. If you want one, you can pick some up here. I have some in my office. I didn't want to distribute them if you didn't want them. And that's all I have. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just a reminder, your budget books, if you have them with you, you can leave them here, and the Finance Department will update them with the revised sheets. There's just a couple minor revisions based on today's action that will update those books. They'll also be available online. If you don't want a hard copy of the final adopted version of the budget, you don't need one. We'll provide those a hard copy if you want one, but they'll also be available online. Want to thank Bob Middett and Ken Witt who assisted, and all the staff who assisted in putting the budget together this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Good job. Now, any announcements? Anybody have any announcements? Supervisor Berkey.
Yeah. I just wanted to remind everyone to look at this information regarding tree sales, that not only can you purchase in bulk trees and shrubs, but also some fruit stocks such as blueberries, strawberries, and raspberries. So that's new this year.
Supervisor Hansen.
Yeah, I would add that that's through the Community Development Department. It's an excellent program. It's available to people who work in agriculture as well as people who are residential. You have to buy a certain minimum quantity, but it's a great program, and they're great plants.
No other announcements? Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.